I was still drifting in and out of consciousness when the world tilted under me again, not from pain, but from a phone call that felt like a punch to the chest. I had barely survived a medical crisis that kept me trapped in a hospital bed for 9 long days. Tubes in my arms. Machines beeping. The smell of antiseptic soaked into my skin. I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. My phone buzzed on the bedside table, and I answered it with the shaky optimism of a man hoping for good news. Instead, I heard a bright, cheerful voice I didn't recognize. "Mr. Lawson? Just calling to congratulate you on the sale. The buyers will be picking up the keys Friday." For a second, I thought I misheard. My house? Sold? I sat up too fast, pain shot through my ribs, but it was nothing compared to the burn in my chest. I think you have the wrong person," I said. "I didn't sell anything." The realtor paused, then spoke more carefully. "Sir, everything's already signed. The paperwork is complete. Your daughter handled most of it." My daughter. A cold, hollow numbness spread through me. My house wasn't just a property. It was the place I carried my late wife's laughter, the smell of her cooking, the echoes of raising a family. 33 years of memories. And apparently it had been erased with a signature I never gave. Handled what? My voice cracked. What did she sign? "That's something she can explain better than I can," the realtor said, suddenly uncomfortable. "But yes, the sale is finalized." The call ended. I stared at the blank screen, my heart thundering so loudly I could barely hear my own breath. Betrayal doesn't feel like fire. It feels like ice, quiet, creeping, and merciless. Someone close to me had taken advantage of the moment I was weakest. And deep down, before any evidence, before any confrontation, I already knew who. Before I continue, if you enjoy real-life stories like mine, please subscribe. It truly helps. Because what happened next, it changed everything. The morning after that call, I lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles, every one of them blurring into the next. I'm 62 years old, and I thought I'd already been through my share of storms, burying my wife, downsizing my life, adjusting to the quiet echo of an empty home. But nothing prepared me for the feeling of being robbed while my body was still trying to remember how to breathe normally again. I ended up in the hospital because of a sudden cardiac episode. One moment I was pruning the lemon tree in my backyard, and the next I was on the ground, clutching my chest, convinced I was about to meet my wife on the other side. The doctors told me I was lucky. "A close call," they said. "You need rest. Stability. Low stress." That last part feels laughably ironic now. Through the fog of medication and exhaustion, I kept revisiting the days before the incident, how my daughter, Anna, hovered over me with sugary concern. She kept telling me I looked pale, asking if I needed help paying bills, offering to organize the house paperwork for me. At the time, I took it as love. In hindsight, every memory has a sharp edge. I remember her sitting beside me in the hospital, fussing over pillows, checking my blood pressure like she was auditioning to be a nurse. Her voice was soft, soothing, almost too gentle. She kept telling me not to worry about a thing, that she was handling everything at home. And I believed her. I let myself be comforted by the idea that my only child actually cared enough to step up while I was vulnerable. But that phone call the next morning twisted every warm memory into something uglier. I started re-examining her recent kindnesses with new eyes. The surprise visits. The insistence on helping with documents. The urgency in her smile when she said I didn't need to strain myself with responsibilities. Back then, it felt like family looking out for family. Now, it feels like the opening move of a well-planned betrayal. I wasn't just recovering from a medical scare. I was waking up inside a nightmare someone I loved had quietly built around me. The first real warning sign didn't come wrapped in drama or raised voices. It arrived quietly, disguised as concern. 3 days into my hospital stay, Anna showed up with a fresh cup of coffee, a stack of mail, and that overly bright smile she had been wearing ever since I collapsed. She sat at the edge of the bed, smoothing the blanket over my legs like I was a child instead of her father. "Dad," she began, "you've got a few bills piling up at the house, and I don't want you stressing about anything. You need to focus on healing." Her voice was gentle, but her eyes kept flicking toward the envelope in her hand. She pulled it open without waiting for me to ask. "I can take care of all this for you," she said lightly. "Just sign a couple of forms so I can manage things while you're stuck here." It should have struck me as odd. Why would someone need multiple forms just to pay a water bill? But I was tired. My chest hurt. My thoughts kept drifting in and out like a weak radio signal. When she handed me a pen, my fingers felt clumsy around it. She slid a document toward me, tapping the bottom where she had neatly placed a sticky note with the word "Sign here, Dad" written in her bubbly handwriting. I didn't read the text. I only glanced at the familiar loops of her pen markings, trusting her the way I always had. "It's nothing complicated," she assured me, tossing her hair back with a nervous little laugh. "Just boring financial stuff." That laugh was the first fracture in the facade. It wasn't relaxed. It was tight, forced, like she was terrified I'd look too closely. Every time I hesitated, even for a second, she filled the silence with exaggerated affection. "You don't need to worry about anything now. I've got you." Her hand brushed my arm, but instead of comfort, I felt a tightening in my gut. A whisper of intuition. But the room spun when I sat up, and the fatigue wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. So I signed the papers she lined up in front of me, one after another, barely aware of what I was doing. She gathered them quickly, almost too quickly, smoothing the pages with the flat of her palm before tucking them back into her bag. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly. "Rest. I'll take care of everything." At the time, it sounded like devotion. Later, I would realize it was the first step in her plan, an easy opportunity presented by my weakness, and she took it without hesitation. That moment should have stopped me cold. Instead, it became the reason my entire life was nearly stolen from me. When the hospital finally discharged me, I felt like a man stepping back into his life after being gone for years, not days. The air outside was sharp and cool, almost shocking against my skin. I wanted nothing more than to sink into my favorite chair, feel the familiar warmth of my home, and convince myself everything was going to return to normal. But normal was gone. My neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, picked me up because Anna was busy with work. That alone didn't bother me. What bothered me was the way she kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, her mouth pressed into a thin line as if she were holding something back. "You're sure your daughter knows you're coming home today?" she finally asked. "She signed the discharge papers herself," I said. "Why?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Never mind. You'll see when we get there." Those words unsettled me more than she realized. When her car turned into my driveway, my heart stopped. A silver sedan was parked in front of my house. 2 people, strangers, stood by the porch, chatting casually with a man holding a clipboard. And attached to the front lawn was a sign that nearly made my legs give out. "Sold." I opened the car door so fast I nearly fell onto the pavement. The man with the clipboard turned toward me, his professional smile freezing when he recognized me. "Mr. Lawson. I wasn't expecting you today." "What is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Why is there a 'sold' sign on my lawn?" One of the strangers stepped forward politely. "We finalized everything earlier this week. We're the new owners. We were just doing a final walkthrough." Their words felt unreal, like hearing someone calmly describe the destruction of my life. "You can't own this," I said quietly. "I never sold my home." The realtor's smile tightened. He tapped the papers on his clipboard. Sir, we have your signature. The sale is complete. Your daughter handled the coordination while you were hospitalized. A thin ringing filled my ears. My hands trembled uncontrollably. My daughter? Yes, he said, shifting nervously. She was very clear that you wanted to downsize quickly. She said you were moving into assisted living? It felt like my lungs refused to expand. She said what? He stepped back, sensing the danger in my tone. Look. I understand this is a lot, but everything was done legally. I can show you the paperwork if you'd like. The buyers watched me with uneasy sympathy, but sympathy doesn't undo betrayal. I walked past all of them, ignoring their attempts to speak, and tried the front door. Locked. A stranger's key was about to open the place where I built a life with my wife, where every memory lived. I pressed my forehead against the door, breathing in short, broken bursts. Someone had sold my home. Someone who knew exactly how vulnerable I was. Someone who had access to my signature. Someone who called me Dad. In that moment, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a deliberate act. And it started with my daughter. I didn't call Anna right away. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too violently to hold the phone. Mrs. Henderson helped me back into her car, her expression full of pity I didn't want. On the ride to her house, the betrayal settled deeper, heavy, suffocating, undeniable. Once inside, I finally dialed my daughter. She answered on the second ring, her tone bright, almost rehearsed. Hey, Dad. Are you home yet? There was a tremor in my voice I couldn't hide. Anna, what did you do? A beat of silence. Then a soft, breathy laugh. What do you mean? You sold my house. I said it plainly, because there was no point in softening the truth. She exhaled sharply. Oh. That. As if we were discussing a misplaced grocery list. Anna, you had no right. That house wasn't yours to touch. Her voice shifted instantly, sweetness dissolving into irritation. Dad, please. You're being dramatic. We talked about this. No, I said. We didn't. Yes, we did, she insisted. At the hospital. You said you didn't want to deal with the stress anymore. You said you trusted me. You even signed the paperwork. I closed my eyes, remembering the stack of forms she laid in front of me, the sticky notes, the soothing words. You tricked me, I whispered. Dad, she groaned loudly, you were exhausted. I helped you. Selling the house was the smartest move for everyone. You can't live alone anymore. You can barely stand up without gasping. This was my home, I said through clenched teeth. Your mother's home. You had no right. She sighed heavily, as if I were the burden here. Look. I'm sorry if the timing wasn't ideal, but you weren't using the space. And the market is cooling. It made financial sense. Financial sense. There it was, the first honest piece of her motive. What did you need the money for, Anna? She hesitated. Then her voice sharpened. That's not important. What matters is that you're safe. I've already arranged a room for you at a retirement complex. It's nice. Clean. Quiet. You'll adjust. I felt the heat rush to my face. A retirement complex? Without even asking me? You should be thanking me, she snapped, irritation rising. I saved you from living in that creaking old house alone. This is better for you. No, I said. This is better for you. Her silence confirmed everything. Then, unexpectedly, her tone softened, sliding back into its sugary coating. Dad, don't do this. You're confused right now. Your heart condition, the medications, it's making you remember things wrong. Gaslighting. Clear. Calculated. My grip tightened on the phone. Anna, I'm not confused. The realtor told me you handled the sale. And I did it for your well-being, she said quickly. You should be grateful. Really? I'm the only one taking care of things. My pulse hammered. You took my home. You took advantage of me. Her voice dropped to an icy whisper I'd never heard from her before. Well, someone had to do something. You weren't exactly being responsible. There it was, the truth hidden beneath her fake concern. She didn't see me as her father. She saw me as an obstacle. And in that moment, something inside me shifted from disbelief to cold, steady resolve. If she thought I was too weak to fight back, she was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. After the call ended, I sat in Mrs. Henderson's guest room, staring at the wall as if it might offer answers. My chest felt tight, not from my recent heart episode, but from something heavier, something far more wounding. I had survived a medical emergency. But this felt like a death of its own. The betrayal didn't rush in like a storm. It seeped into me slowly, spreading cold through every vein. Anna wasn't just my daughter, she was the child I carried on my shoulders, the teenager I worked double shifts to send to college, the woman I helped through her divorce. Every sacrifice, every compromise, every late-night reassurance, all of it suddenly twisted into something grotesque. She didn't steal a house. She stole trust. She stole history. She stole the last tangible piece of the life I built with her mother. I pressed a hand over my eyes, and for a moment, I let myself crumble. I felt old. Frail. Stupid. How could I have signed anything without reading it? How could I have believed every soft word she fed me while I lay helpless? A part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to give up. But beneath the grief, buried deep under the weight of heartbreak, something else stirred, a part of me that had been quiet for years. The part that built things. Solved things. Questioned things. I spent decades as a systems planner, mapping infrastructures, analyzing failures, identifying weak points. You don't do that kind of work without learning how to think in layers, how to read between the lines, how to recognize when something doesn't add up. And nothing about this situation added up. Anna's rush. The documents. The timing. Her rehearsed lines. Her panic when I pushed back. Grief sharpened into recognition. This wasn't carelessness or impulsivity. This was planned. And if she planned it, there would be a trail. People who enabled her. Documents she never expected me to review. Mistakes she was confident I'd never catch. I took a deep breath, steadying the tremor in my hands. The hospital might have weakened my body, but it hadn't erased my mind. I was done being a victim lying flat on my back. If she wanted to treat me like an old man who couldn't protect what was his, fine. Let her believe that. Let her underestimate me. Because I wasn't just going to get answers. I was going to get my life back, piece by piece, document by document. And when I was done, she'd understand one thing with absolute clarity. I may have been vulnerable. But I was not defeated. I waited until Mrs. Henderson went to bed before I began. I needed quiet. I needed a clear head. And most of all, I needed privacy. Whatever I uncovered, I didn't want pity or interference. This was between me and the truth. I sat at her dining table with my phone, a half-charged laptop she lent me, and the small bundle of mail she'd collected for me while I was in the hospital. Bills, bank statements, insurance updates, ordinary envelopes that now felt like potential evidence. I opened each one slowly, forcing myself to read every line. The first strange thing I noticed was that several bills had been forwarded to a new email address, an address I'd never created. My name was still on the account, but the contact email had been changed. Automatically managed. The forwarding had begun the same week I collapsed in my backyard. My stomach tightened. Then I opened my bank statement. I didn't expect to find money missing. Anna was too smart for direct theft. But one detail made my jaw clench. Electronic signature authorization requests. Multiple. All approved. I clicked the first one. It was a simple notification. Your representative has been granted administrative access. Representative. That word echoed through my chest like a hammer strike. I checked the timestamp. It was 2 days after I was admitted to the hospital, on a day when I was heavily sedated and barely conscious. Next, I pulled up the county property database. It took me a while to find my way around the website, but when I entered my address, a single line at the top nearly stopped my heart again. Property transfer, completed. Seller, Lawson, Harold. Authorized agent, Lawson, Anna. There it was, plain, official, undeniable. I scrolled further and found the uploaded PDF of the closing packet. The pages loaded painfully slow, but when the first document appeared, I leaned forward so suddenly the chair creaked beneath me. Durable power of attorney. My name typed neatly. My signature at the bottom. I stared at it for a long time. It looked like my handwriting, but not quite. The slant was slightly off. The loops on the L too wide. It was almost perfect. Then I noticed the date next to my signature. Signed the afternoon after my cardiac episode. Signed at a time when I couldn't even stand or form coherent sentences. A cold weight settled in my chest. She had either tricked me into signing it, or forged it completely. Either way, she now had legal control over everything tied to my name. Bank accounts. Investments. Insurance. And yes, my home. Suddenly, all her hospital concern made sense. She wasn't comforting me. She was managing the situation. Keeping me calm. Keeping me weak. Keeping me agreeable. I clicked through the rest of the closing documents. Every single signature attributed to me looked just slightly off. Not sloppy. Not obvious. Just wrong enough to make the truth undeniable. The paperwork wasn't boring financial stuff like she had claimed. It was a blueprint for dismantling my entire life. By the time I closed the laptop, a different kind of exhaustion settled over me, not weakness, but clarity. She hadn't acted alone. Someone notarized those signatures. Someone processed those forms. Someone pushed the sale through fast enough to avoid questions. She thought I'd never look. She thought I'd accept the loss and stay quiet. But I wasn't done. My daughter had taken my home. Now it was time to take back everything she thought she'd stolen forever. I didn't sleep that night. I waited for sunrise, pacing Mrs. Henderson's living room like a man circling the edge of a cliff. As soon as the clock hit 8 a.m., I called the only person I trusted to navigate something this twisted, Michael Trent, an old colleague who had left our firm years ago to become a financial attorney. He picked up on the second ring. "Harold? You all right? You sound rough." "I need your help," I said. "And I need you to listen carefully." There was something steadying about the sound of his voice. Maybe it was the years we spent solving problems together. Maybe it was just the relief of talking to someone who wasn't trying to manipulate me. I laid out the facts: my collapse, the hospital stay, the papers Anna brought, the sudden sale of the house, the power of attorney. My voice broke twice, but I forced myself to keep going. When I finished, he didn't speak for a few seconds. Then, in a tone devoid of comfort or hesitation, he said, "Harold, this wasn't an accident. This was orchestrated." My pulse quickened. The documents. I didn't sign that power of attorney. Not knowingly. I believe you, he said. And even if you did sign something, the timeline makes it invalid. Anything signed while heavily medicated or mentally compromised is contestable. Plus, the sale moved unusually fast. That's a red flag. He asked me to email him everything: bank notifications, the forwarded mail, the closing documents, the scanned PDF of the POA. I did it immediately. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. His tone had sharpened. I found the notary's information. Harold, this woman isn't just some random professional. She's connected to your daughter. My breath caught. Connected how? Social media links. Mutual friends. Appearances at the same events. And she notarized everything the same day your daughter submitted the sale packet. Too fast. Too convenient. The pieces clicked together with painful clarity. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had recruited help. Harold, he continued, you're dealing with fraud. Not misunderstanding. Fraud. But this gives us leverage. A lot of leverage. My grief shifted into something sharper: purpose. What do I do next? I asked. His answer was firm. You let me handle the legal side. And you prepare yourself emotionally. Because we're going to dismantle this entire scheme from the foundation up. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about recovering what I'd lost. It was about exposing what my daughter had become, and making sure she could never do this to anyone again. The moment Michael mentioned the notary's timeline, a memory I had buried under exhaustion and medication tore its way back into focus, sharp, vivid, and ugly. It was the third evening of my hospital stay. I remember the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the soft hiss of oxygen from the wall mount, and the slow, foggy heaviness in my body that made everything feel distant. I was drifting in and out when I heard Anna's voice. Dad? Hey, Dad, wake up for a second. I blinked my eyes open. She was standing beside the bed, smiling too brightly, clutching a leather folder against her chest. You okay? She asked, pushing a straw toward my mouth. Drink a little. You need to stay hydrated. Even in the haze, something felt off. She wasn't usually this attentive. She paced the room instead of sitting. Her fingers drummed against the folder. She kept glancing at the hallway as if she was rushing against an invisible clock. I brought some paperwork, she finally said, her tone light but her eyes laser-focused. Just small things so I can manage stuff for you while you rest. Bills. Insurance. You know, boring adult nonsense. She pulled out a stack of documents an inch thick. I tried to lift myself, but my muscles felt like wet sand. Anna. I'm not sure now is. It'll take 2 minutes. Her voice sharpened, then immediately softened again. Please, Dad. I'm trying to help. She laid the papers on the tray table and uncapped a pen, placing it between my fingers as if I were a child. My hands were shaking. The letters on the page blurred. I squinted, trying to focus, but the medication made everything swim. It's just permission forms, she added. So I can talk to the bank, the insurance company, basic stuff. You don't need to read it. Trust me. Those 2 words, trust me, hit differently now. Whenever I hesitated, she filled the silence with a gentle touch to my arm or a soft, Dad, please. I'm trying to make your life easier. Her voice trembled just enough to sound emotional, but not enough to be real. I signed 1 page. Then another. And another. At some point, I remember saying, this feels like a lot. Her smile never wavered. It's just how lawyers package things. I highlighted all your parts. You don't have to strain yourself. She flipped pages quickly, covering sections with her hand, nudging the documents into place the way a magician directs your eyes away from the trick. I barely understood anything I was touching. Then, near the bottom of the stack, I caught a glimpse of bold letters at the top of a page. Durable power of attorney. My voice slurred. Why do you need? That's for medical stuff, she cut in instantly. Just in case you can't sign something later. Everyone your age does it. It's standard. The hospital recommended it. She said it so confidently, so casually, that my fogged brain accepted the lie. I signed. She gathered the papers in a single swift motion, tapping them into a neat stack. Her shoulders relaxed, too visibly. Then she leaned down, pressed a kiss to my forehead, and whispered, "Don't worry. I've got everything under control." But the look she gave me as she walked out, tight, victorious, almost relieved, haunted me. It wasn't the look of a daughter helping her father. It was the look of someone who had just gotten exactly what they came for. And now, with a clear mind, I finally understood what she had taken from me that night. Not just my signature. My autonomy. My entire life's foundation. When the flashback finally loosened its grip on me, I felt hollow, drained in a way no medication could explain. The hospital room, her forced smile, the rush to get my signature, it all replayed in my mind like a scene meant to break me. For a moment, it almost did. I sat completely still at Mrs. Henderson's table, listening to the faint hum of her refrigerator, trying to steady my breathing. The weight of everything, my daughter's deceit, the forged control she'd taken, the home she sold out from under me, pressed against my ribs like a physical force. I had always been a quiet man. A patient man. A father who tried to understand before condemning. But as the pieces clicked together in my mind, grief slowly gave way to something colder. Clearer. Sharper. She thought I was too old. Too medicated. Too worn down to notice what she'd done. She thought she could manipulate me like a confused patient and walk away with everything I had built over a lifetime. But she forgot one crucial thing. I didn't survive 62 years by being naive. The part of me she underestimated, the part that planned, analyzed, and dismantled complex systems for a living, was awake now. And once that part of me locked onto a problem, it didn't stop until it solved it. I leaned back in the chair, folded my shaking hands together, and let the resolve settle deep into my bones. She believed she had total control because of a stack of papers and a forged signature. But she had no idea how fragile her plan really was. Fraud leaves footprints. Desperation leaves patterns. And arrogance, her arrogance, leaves cracks big enough to tear an entire scheme apart. I wasn't going to confront her with rage. I wasn't going to cry or beg or plead for what was mine. No. I was going to do exactly what she'd never expect. Stay quiet. Stay calm. And strike with precision. Before this story ends, she'll understand exactly who she tried to overpower. And why she should have never mistaken my weakness for surrender. If you're still watching and enjoy stories like this one, make sure to subscribe for more. Michael worked fast, faster than I expected. By the next morning, he'd already pulled records, contacted agencies, and dug into places I didn't even know existed. When he called, his voice was firm, clipped, all business. It was the tone he used only when he'd found something serious. "Harold," he said, "I need you sitting down." I was. But hearing that didn't make anything easier. "I've analyzed the entire sale timeline," he continued. "And your daughter didn't just act alone, she orchestrated every step to happen in the shortest time legally possible. That's not normal. Homes don't move that fast unless someone is pushing hard from the inside." I felt that familiar sting in my chest, not the hard episode, but the betrayal flaring again. "Tell me everything." He didn't sugarcoat a single word. "First," he said, "your daughter submitted the listing paperwork the day after you signed the power of attorney, while you were still heavily sedated. She listed the home far below market value. That's suspicious enough. Far below market value. She didn't even try to hide her intentions. And second, he went on, the realtor didn't request proof of your medical stability or mental competence, which is required when a senior citizen suddenly transfers full selling authority to a relative. That's negligence. Clear negligence. I clenched my jaw. Keep going. The notary, he said. Her name is Chloe Grant. Not random. Not neutral. She's friends with your daughter. Social media comments, photos, brunch outings, you name it. I shut my eyes. Of course. And third, he added, the sale included something unusual, an expedited closing request, citing your urgent medical decline as the reason. My stomach twisted. She said that? She put it in writing, he confirmed. Claimed you needed long-term care immediately, and that the sale was necessary to pay for it. That was the moment I finally understood the full shape of her plan. She wasn't just stealing my house. She was rewriting my entire life on paper, painting me as a man incapable of making decisions, a burden who needed to be tucked away somewhere while she liquidated everything I owned. What about the money? I asked quietly. There was a pause. That, he said, is the part that reveals her motive. The funds were wired into a joint account with her name attached, an account she opened only a month ago. She's already spent a significant portion of it. How much? He sighed. Enough that we'll need to move quickly. My hands curled into fists. Not from rage, but from clarity. Everything she'd done had been calculated. The sweet visits. The fake concern. The rushed signatures. The hospital manipulation. The frantic push to sell before I woke up enough to fight back. Harold, Michael said, softening a little, this isn't the work of a confused daughter. This is deliberate exploitation. I nodded slowly. And now we know exactly what she took. No, he corrected gently. Now we know exactly where to hit back. His words steadied me, filling the hollow space inside my chest with something fierce and unshakable. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't alone. And her scheme, no matter how carefully crafted, was already starting to fracture. She built it on deceit. Now I was going to tear it apart with the truth. Michael asked me to come to his office the following afternoon. When I arrived, he already had a stack of papers spread across the conference table, organized, highlighted, tabbed, and cross-referenced. The man worked like a surgeon preparing for a high-risk operation. Sit, he said, not unkindly. We're going to walk through this step by step. I lowered myself into the chair, bracing for impact. He began with the simplest truth. Harold, if you confront Anna directly, she'll panic. She'll destroy evidence. She might even try to move you into assisted living immediately so you lose physical access to everything. You cannot tip her off. I nodded. I won't. Good, he said. Because what we do next will only work if she believes she's still in control. He pushed a folder toward me. This is the plan. I opened it. The first page was a flowchart, clean lines, boxes, arrows. Strategic. Brutal. Elegant. Michael continued, we're not going after your daughter first. That's emotional. It's messy. It's a waste of time. I looked up at him sharply. She stole my house. And she's broke, he said. If we sue her, you'll win morally and lose financially. She doesn't have the assets to repay damages. But the people who helped her? The institutions that failed you? They do. He laid out 3 targets. 1. The notary, Chloe Grant. She notarized your signature despite your medical condition, he said. And we have proof she's friends with Anna. That alone can invalidate the POA. Fraudulent notarization is a criminal offense. He showed me screenshots, Public photos of Chloe and Anna smiling with glasses of wine, comments, hashtags. Clear connection. 2. The realtor. He accepted a drastically undervalued sale without due diligence. He didn't confirm your consent. He didn't check your medical status. That's negligence. He slid over another document. He could lose his license over this. 3. The title company. This part surprised me. They're the biggest target, he said. Because if they issued title insurance on a fraudulent transaction, they're liable for everything. He tapped the table for emphasis. And I mean everything. I exhaled slowly. What happens when we go after them? They panic, he said simply. And when corporations panic, they settle. He leaned back, interlocking his fingers. The goal isn't a long court battle. The goal is to put so much pressure on the institutions that they undo the sale themselves. How? I asked. He pointed at the flowchart. First, we file a formal claim disputing your mental competence at the time of signing. Then we present evidence of the notary's direct conflict of interest. That alone is enough to invalidate the POA. He turned another page. Next, we file a negligence complaint against the realtor and notify the buyer's attorney. Buyers hate uncertainty. They'll back out if the deal looks contaminated. And the title company? A thin smile crossed his face. That's where we apply the most pressure. We present them with evidence of elder exploitation. No company wants that tied to their name. They'll start scrambling to protect themselves, and the fastest way to do that is to reverse the sale before it blows up publicly. I stared at the documents, every line sharp, every detail meticulously built. Michael wasn't just helping me. He was going to war. When do we start? I asked. We already did, he replied. I filed the first set of claims an hour before you walked in. A slow, burning certainty settled inside me. My daughter thought she'd buried me under paperwork and a forged signature. But she underestimated the man she stole from. And now? We were coming for every person who helped her, legally, surgically, and without mercy. For the next few days, I did exactly what Michael instructed. I disappeared into the role of the feeble, confused old man my daughter believed I was. It was surprisingly easy. All I had to do was stop reaching out, stop asking questions, stop showing any sign of resistance. The silence made her comfortable. Careless. Overconfident. Anna called me once, just once. Dad, I tried stopping by your place, but you weren't home, she said lightly, as if she hadn't thrown my life into chaos. Let me know when you're settled at the retirement center. I'll help you move. The audacity of it nearly took my breath away. I'm still figuring things out, I said softly, letting my voice waver. Everything's a bit confusing. She exhaled in relief. Don't worry. I'll handle everything. Good. Let her believe that. The more she thought she'd broken me, the more reckless she became. Meanwhile, Michael expanded the investigation. He needed every scrap of proof, digital and otherwise, because the institutions we were threatening would fight viciously once they realized how much liability they were facing. That's where my role came in. I still had access to Anna's old iCloud account. Years ago she had synced it with mine so I could help her recover photos from a lost phone. She probably forgot. Or assumed I couldn't possibly remember how to use the settings. She was wrong. One night, while sitting alone at Mrs. Henderson's kitchen table, I logged in. And what I found nearly made my hands shake with a mixture of rage and vindication. Messages. Screenshots. Conversations with friends. Voice notes. In one text thread, she wrote. If Dad hadn't collapsed, this would have taken months. The timing was perfect. Perfect. She used that word. In another message to the notary, Chloe. Just act like it's standard procedure. He won't question anything, he's doped up. And then, to her ex-husband. Once the sale clears, I'll finally be able to pay off the credit cards. I swear, this is my ticket out. Her ticket out. Funded by my life. I forwarded everything to Michael, every text, every voice note, every timestamp. His reply came 10 minutes later. This is exactly what we needed. This destroys her credibility and proves coercion. Keep playing your part. We're close. Close. I sat back and let the truth settle in. Anna thought she'd taken everything from me. But in trying to bury me, she'd left a trail straight back to her own undoing. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something other than grief. I felt momentum. A week later, Michael called and told me the stage was set. Tomorrow morning. My conference room. Bring nothing. Say nothing unless I tell you to. And remember, your silence is your weapon. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, but from the heavy anticipation of what was coming. This wasn't just a meeting. It was the moment the entire structure Anna built would collapse under the weight of its own lies. When I walked into Michael's office the next day, the energy in the room was electric, sharp, tense, humming with barely controlled conflict. Michael stood at the head of the conference table. Beside him was a massive binder, at least 4 inches thick, sealed with a clasp like it contained classified intel. The door opened again. First came the buyers and their attorney, whispering urgently, eyes darting. Behind them strode the representative from the title company, face pale, jaw tight. Then the realtor slunk in, avoiding eye contact with everyone. And finally, my daughter. Anna walked in with a small, sympathetic smile, acting like she'd been summoned to help her poor, confused father navigate complicated paperwork. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Dad," she murmured, "don't worry. I'll make sure this goes smoothly." Her voice made my stomach tighten, but I kept my expression blank, just as Michael instructed. He waited until everyone had taken a seat. Then he snapped open the binder and dropped it onto the table. The thud echoed like a gunshot. "Let's get straight to the point," Michael said, his tone crisp and cold. "This binder contains a timeline of fraudulent activity, notary misconduct, elder exploitation, and a negligent real estate transaction executed under a forged or coerced document." The title company rep stiffened. The realtor swallowed hard. The buyers looked horrified. Anna's smile froze, just barely. Michael began laying out evidence piece by piece. The rushed POA. The notary's conflict of interest. The undervalued listing. The unusual speed of the sale. The medical records showing my sedation. And finally, the digital messages from Anna herself, time-stamped, undeniable. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every sentence landed like a hammer. The buyer's attorney leaned forward, scanning the printouts with growing alarm. "This sale is contaminated," he muttered. "We can't be part of this." The title company rep exhaled shakily. We weren't aware, this is serious exposure. If this goes to the state board." "It will," Michael said, "unless this entire transaction is reversed immediately." Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. Then he slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "Here is what we require to avoid litigation." The demands were simple but devastating. 1. Immediate cancellation of the sale. 2. Full reinstatement of property ownership to Harold Lawson. 3. Termination of the realtor's involvement. 4. Formal acknowledgement of title company negligence. The buyer's attorney didn't hesitate. "We agree. We want out." The title company rep nodded rapidly. "We'll reverse the transfer today." The realtor looked like he might faint. And Anna, finally realizing the walls were closing in, whispered, "Dad. Dad, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just trying to." Michael cut her off sharply. "Save it for someone who didn't see your messages." Her face drained completely. It was over. Not with shouting. Not with chaos. But with cold, irrefutable truth. Everything she built, every lie she stacked on top of another, collapsed in a single morning. And I didn't have to lift a finger. All I had to do was let the truth do the work. The meeting didn't end with shouting. It ended with signatures. Cold, quiet signatures that unraveled my daughter's scheme piece by piece. The buyers backed out immediately. They wanted no part of a transaction that might drag them into a legal nightmare. Their attorney practically bolted from the room after signing the withdrawal agreement. The realtor folded next, mumbling excuses and promises as he scribbled his name on the termination forms. His hands shook so violently he dropped his pen twice. But the title company was the real domino. Their representative stared at Michael's binder, the emails, the medical records, the notary's connections, Anna's messages bragging about the perfect timing, and finally exhaled in defeat. "We'll reverse the transfer," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Today." Michael nodded, expression unreadable. "You'll also return full ownership to Mr. Lawson and issue a written admission of error for failing to verify his capacity." The man swallowed hard. "Yes. We'll prepare it immediately." Just like that, my home, my life, was legally restored to me. No court battles. No delays. No loopholes. They were so terrified of the fallout that they practically shoved the documents across the table. But the real moment, the one that carved itself into my memory, was when Anna realized there was no one left to hide behind. No notary. No realtor. No corporate shield. Just her. She looked small. Fragile. Almost like the little girl I once carried on my hip. Almost. "Dad," she whispered. "You don't understand. I didn't mean, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just needed help. I thought once things settled, I could fix it." Her voice trembled, but her eyes darted, calculating, searching for an angle. For a moment, I simply studied her face. The panic. The entitlement. The desperation of a person who believed consequences were for everyone else. Then Michael spoke before I could. "Miss Lawson, you will have no further legal authority over your father. Your power of attorney has been revoked due to misconduct. Any remaining funds you accessed are subject to forensic tracing and potential recovery." She flinched. "But I'm his daughter. And that," Michael said coldly, "is the only reason you are not facing criminal charges today." Her mouth fell open, but no words came out. The meeting ended as quietly as it began. When I stepped outside the building, the sun hit my face, warm and steady, nothing like the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital where this nightmare started. For the first time in weeks, I took a full breath. My house was mine again. My autonomy restored. Her power over me, gone. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Free from manipulation. Free from fear. Free from the illusion that family loyalty means unconditional trust. She tried to take everything. But in the end, the only thing she succeeded in taking was her place in my life. And I felt lighter because of it. When everything was finally undone and the legal dust settled, Michael drove me back to my house. The "sold" sign had already been yanked from the lawn, leaving behind a patch of disturbed soil, an oddly fitting reminder of how close I'd come to losing everything. He offered to walk me inside, but I shook my head. I need to do this alone. The key, my key, fit back into the lock with a soft click. I stepped into the hallway, and the familiar scent of old wood and lemon polish washed over me. The air was still, untouched, as if the house itself had been holding its breath, waiting for me to return. I walked slowly from room to room, running my fingers across the banister, the fireplace mantel, the kitchen counter where my wife once rolled out dough on Saturday mornings. Every step hurt in a different way. The relief of having my home back was real, but so was the grief. Because while I reclaimed the bricks, the walls, the title, I lost something far more permanent. Trust. There's no coming back from the kind of betrayal Anna committed. She didn't just try to steal my home. She tried to erase me. Replace me. Reduce me to a problem she could sign away. I sat down in my wife's old armchair and let the house settle around me. The silence wasn't lonely this time, it was honest. There was no pretending now, no illusions about who my daughter had become or what she was capable of. I wasn't angry in that moment. Not anymore. Just, tired. Tired from fighting. Tired from realizing the person I raised had grown into someone I could no longer recognize. Tired from accepting that she did this with intention, not desperation, not confusion, but choice. But beneath the exhaustion, there was something steadier. Strength. Not the loud, aggressive kind. The quiet kind, the kind built from surviving, rebuilding, enduring. I looked around my living room, at the pieces of my life still standing, and I knew one thing with absolute clarity. She took her shot. And she failed. Not because I was stronger than her, but because the truth was stronger than the lies she wrapped herself in. This home survived her. And so did I. I stayed in that armchair for a long time, letting the weight of everything settle, not the shock, not even the betrayal, but the clarity. The kind that comes only after the storm has passed and the wreckage is finally still enough to examine piece by piece. People like to say family is unconditional. But unconditional trust, that's something you give only once. I kept replaying the past weeks, asking myself where I went wrong. Was it when I ignored the first red flag? When I let my guard down in the hospital? When I assumed love would stop someone from crossing a line? But here's what I finally understood. It wasn't my responsibility to anticipate her betrayal. It was her responsibility not to commit it. My mistake wasn't trusting her. My mistake was assuming she valued that trust as much as I did. Yet even with all the heartbreak, something unexpected grew out of the wreckage, an unfiltered understanding of who I am without illusions clouding the picture. I'm not weak. I'm not helpless. I'm not disposable because of my age or my health. I survived losing my wife. I survived a failing heart. And I survived a betrayal that would have broken a younger version of me. This experience didn't shatter me, it sharpened me. It reminded me that boundaries aren't cruelty. They're protection. It taught me that love without accountability becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. And it showed me that even in my 60s, even after a medical scare, I am capable of defending my life, legally, mentally, and emotionally. I reclaimed my home. I reclaimed my autonomy. And most importantly, I reclaimed the part of myself that refuses to be erased. But there's one thought I keep returning to, one question that lingers heavier than all the others. If your own child, the person you raised and sacrificed for, tried to steal the life you built, what would you have done in my place? Because forgiveness is easy to preach. Boundaries are easy to judge. But when the betrayal comes from your own blood, every answer becomes harder.